Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. So at the start of the year, anyone not expecting it got to see what the effects of raising trade barriers with your largest market were. Checks on exports to the EU were met with delays, bans and returns. Smugglers got a break as the UK government decided not to implement full checks on imports until mid-2021. But even that is now in doubt. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So just to bring you up to speed with the state of play when it comes to imports from the EU. So exports to the EU already face full checks, though we do have some grace periods in place for some items, especially regarding trade between Britain and Northern Ireland. But in terms of imports from the EU to Britain, there are requirements for some paperwork for certain goods, but most don't have to make full customs declarations until July the 1st. They're asked to keep the paperwork themselves, but don't bother showing it to us because we ain't got anyone to check it. There are some health certificate requirements coming online at the end of this month, in theory, and full declarations and checks are supposed to take place from July the 1st. Now, the reason for the delay is we're not ready. France were ready. Other countries were ready because they spent years preparing for Brexit. We didn't, apparently, and we were the one who wanted it. This 6-month grace period was announced in the first half of last year. Liz Truss, Cabinet Minister, some of you may remember, wrote to Gove and Sunak at the time to get their assurances that we would be applying full checks on July the 1st. Why did she write the letter to her Cabinet colleagues when she could have just asked them? Because she didn't trust them. She didn't trust that this policy would be followed through because she looked at the situation like all of us did and went, yeah, we're not going to be ready even then, are we? We're not going to be ready for years, quite frankly. In order to be able to carry out these checks, we are going to need the systems and people in place. Now, we're told by Rishi Sunak, apparently, oh yeah, all the systems, it's all on track, but we're just being a bit careful. But the thing is, in terms of the people and systems, the people would include 50,000 new bureaucrats. Michael Gove said we need 50,000 new customs officials just to deal with Brexit. He said that last year. Now, as always, I have no clue whatsoever how many we actually have because the government don't seem keen on telling us. Which means it's nowhere near 50,000, of course. So less than 4 months to go and it really doesn't look like we'll be ready to apply those checks in July. This is a problem because we can't afford the sort of delays that currently hit our exports. And bear in mind, the delays that hit our exports got nothing to do with the fact that France aren't ready. It's entirely to do with the system itself. Imagine what the delays on imports would be like when we don't even have the systems in place. I mean, we can't afford the hits to the exports we're getting either. But it is easier to hide that because you just make lies up, like I was talking in the last video. But if you get the same clown show with imports, or worse, because we will be handling those, and there'll be no hiding it. A new report suggests that the government are not going to go ahead with their plans for full checks this summer because of a fear of severe food shortages in our supermarkets. The government are apparently considering, haven't decided yet, a lighter touch, as it's being described, to both the controls coming online in April as well as July. Remember what I said last week about the hospitality industry getting clobbered? If at just the time they were going to be allowed to open up fully again, for summer, they weren't able to get in the food and drink necessary to actually open. That would not only leave people with empty supermarket shelves, but also kill off the intended summer orgy of going out, eating and drinking. Embarrassing, to say the least. But the thing is, if we don't apply the intended checks by this summer, well, there seems to be a few implications there. One is that we would be maintaining weak borders. Brexit was supposed to be about controlling our borders, wasn't it? I mean, I know it wasn't. Apart from the fact that we seem to be the only country in the world not to control our borders during the pandemic, which had nothing to do with international rules because every other bugger did. We also have a history of looser border restrictions in the UK than EU rules expected. It was just convenient for politicians to blame the EU for perceived border issues. But our borders are now weak. We are barely checking anything at all that passes across our borders from the EU. If we don't apply full checks in July, then the so-called smugglers' charter that is Brexit will continue. An off-the-record statement suggested that unelected bureaucrat Brexit Minister David Frost was planning to let goods through even if the paperwork had some clerical errors in it. Okay, I see. So you get your customs declarations, you write "I am a fish" all over them and just send it off. Oh, there seems to be some clerical errors here, say customs officials. Oh well, according to the latest guidance, that's allowed. Just let it all through. That just sounds like having our borders wide open whilst pretending that it's not that bad. We're just allowing the odd clerical error. It's all fine. We were just, But how do you know it's fine if the paperwork doesn't tell you exactly what it is? And it would surely take quite a long time to assess. So if you're talking about allowing clerical errors, that implies that someone's got to read through this form. First of all, check it's not correct. Now, what happens in France when that happens? Oh, the form's not correct, send it back. Simple, done. What we're apparently going to be saying is, oh, the form's not correct. Right, let's grade it and see if it meets these dubious tolerance parameters, if we can allow it through or not. If we haven't got time to check things normally, we haven't got time to grade the customs forms to see if it's correct enough. Second thought is for international trade rules. Now, if we don't apply checks to EU goods, but we do apply checks to goods coming from, say, the United States, China, and so on, won't those other countries get a little bit miffed? After all, why should their goods be subject to harsher controls than EU goods, which are their competitors? I mean, it was fine while we were in the single market because we had an international treaty that covered that free movement of goods. But we don't anymore. It was probably okay to have this weakness in our borders in place for like 6 months because it was limited, really wasn't worth anyone's time taking it to the World Trade Organization for resolution, because nothing would be resolved for ages anyway. But if we relax those rules for this summer, then we'll be doing the EU favours for an unspecified period of time. Because what's going to happen, either we'll say, look, we'll put these checks in place when we're ready, in which case it could be years, or they'll be saying, oh yeah, but we'll have the checks in place for, say, December. But then it's like, well, you said for July, how do we believe it's going to be for December now? How would you feel if you were a member of the American government, for example, and one of your exporters sends something, the paperwork isn't right, and it's sent back? But if the same thing happens with, say, German goods, well, they still get to go through. And there's no agreement covering this. There's nothing formally written down. I would think the Americans would get a bit pissy about that. And another thing to consider is what Richard Burnett, who's the head of the Road Haulage Association, said. He was basically implying that they would welcome a lighter touch approach on imports in general. Of course, obviously, because that helps his industry. But he noted that we're still facing severe problems in exporting to the EU. He wants the government to come to arrangements with the EU to ease outbound problems. But that's not likely if we just give concessions to the EU without anything in return. Because that's what this is. Sure, the motivation isn't to help the EU. The motivation is to prevent severe food shortages in the UK, which will get them into a little bit of trouble. So the purpose of this potential new policy would be entirely selfish, but the reality is that what it would be doing is helping EU businesses. Because UK businesses wanting to export have to follow all the rules, fill in all the paperwork, and it has to be done right, correct, perfect. EU businesses don't have to do that. So we're helping EU businesses remain competitive in a way that British businesses are not. This is why, although trade has dropped both ways, it is disproportionately affecting UK exports. Some Brexit supporter had the misfortune to try and ask me to comment on the drop in exports from various EU countries to the EU. Oh, look, their exports to the UK have been dropping. Yeah, they have, yeah. The problem is that the figure is worse when you compare it to the drop in exports from the UK to that country. Hard to get data, like I said, from the UK, but we know Italy, for example, saw a drop of 38% in exports to the UK. Sounds bad for Italy, and I'm sure it is. Brexit is bad all round. But the UK's exports to Italy dropped by 70%, which is nearly double the proportion. And it would be brainless to think that it could be otherwise. All of our exports to the EU face full checks and in some cases are banned. Most EU exports to the UK face almost no checks at all. Which way would you think will be worst hit, for goodness sake? When the full checks were supposed to apply to EU exports, then you might have expected a little redressing of the balance. Bad both ways. Doesn't help our exports, but it would harm EU exports. But if that doesn't happen, then we are handing yet more Brexit benefits to EU businesses. In that scenario, where is the motivation for the EU to do us any further favours? And that's without even considering our threats to breach the withdrawal agreement, which may transition from mere threats to reality in 4 weeks' time. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.